Stream's not started yet. Get in there. All right. Well, Happy New Year. It's 1 minute after the hour. Usually give people 10 minutes or so to gather. I'll be running around on this end. Hopefully we get more than 6 people. Otherwise, this would be a nice, intimate conversation.
I'm gonna be at least one more, I think. I think one of my team members is deciding to drop in on this.
Well, maybe some people's resolutions were to do less Zoom or something.
And we just lost one.
Oh, man. Oh, hey, what's up, Carter? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. How's everybody doing?
Can't complain.
Oh, there's
I'm-
always something to complain about. Come on. You got to look.
No, I'm contractually not allowed to. Yeah, my New Year's resolution this year is 4K.
Video or revenue?
Oh man, video.
Okay, did you say 4K or poor K?
I don't know. Pourquoi?
Okay. 4K no los dos.
Gee.
That's become
It's not
such a
really
thing
much
with my
like,
friends.
Spanish.
All right, so Paul and Carter, I think you're both relatively fresh faces from my perspective. What brings you to SacPy this year, this 2022?
Well, I've been kind of active in SacPy a few years ago, and then got wrapped up finishing my master's at Georgia Tech, and didn't have time, and finished it, and so I'm back. So
Good to have you back.
thanks.
What was the master's in?
I did Georgia Tech's online master's in computer science, so
Oh.
focus in computational perception and robotics.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, it's not as impressive as it sounds. So
I doubt that.
Yeah, right.
Yo, I just learned how to build computers and robots. That's all.
Build something called Skynet coming soon to a city near you.
See, I think it already happened. To put, I think the gear. I think it already happened.
Yeah, this Austrian guy just kept popping in and out. He was very insistent. What about you, Carter?
Oh, well, I joined about a year ago, I think, at this point. I usually join these meetings, hear what's going on. I just don't say a whole lot. So
Welcome.
that's why I might seem like a fairly new person. I just don't say a whole lot. I just sort of sneak in the door at the last minute and sit in the back row. It's a lot easier when there's a lot more crowded room.
Yeah, that's true. Do we even have to scroll at this point? We got Eric. Who else is there? Wait, why can't I see names? How do I look at names? Oh, Dan's here. Hey, Dan. Happy New Year.
There we go. Happy New Year to everybody.
Oh, we got Tim Greenberg. Happy New Year. few more minutes. What are people working on in Python these days?
This and that.
Ooh, tell me about this. I don't care about that.
All right. Well, how do you
So
want
that's the best part.
well, do you want me to deliver bad news that I'm finding out and visualizing in Python? I could do that. Or
Yeah,
this.
bad news first.
Okay. Well, I have that COVID-19 tracker, which is still going strong. And I can show you what's happening in Sacramento, for instance, the past 2 weeks, if you guys are interested in my sharing it.
Sure, why not? Oh wait, I
All
need
right.
to sharing.
All right, let me just set it up, and it's always trickier than it should be.
Right. I need to make it so people can share. There we go.
See what this thing is. So I've got this COVID tracker. I'll send the link in here. And I guess let me start meeting. Let's start the share. Let's see, here we go. Here it is. Here's this COVID tracker that I have. And here's what's happening. You see this little spike here? That's Omicron. That's happening right now. And so if we move that way, yep, it's popping up. It's a record here. It's a record in the Bay Area, which I can also show. San Francisco Bay Area, there it is. Like where I live in Alameda County. So somewhere around here. Yep, it's popping up there too. And it's especially bad in Los Angeles, the LA Metro. Oh my God, look at that. It's like completely black. I mean, the phone lines at my job's hotline were basically swamped by people who are acting like the apocalypse is happening. I guess if the previous trends are, anything good to go by, that's probably wait a week or 2 weeks to see if there's a corresponding spike in COVID deaths with the spike in COVID cases due to Omicron. And yeah, that's the long and short of it. I guess that's my project sharing in Python, this COVID-19 tracker that I've been working on for close to 2 years now. And it's sort of polished at the level that you see right now for about a year at this point in time. Actually, that was, I think, the first meetup I presented to was sort of basically this polished version of the COVID tracker that I described on that website.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Omicron's getting us.
yeah.
I was wondering, where do you get the data from?
Oh, it's the New York Times COVID-19 database, which is a GitHub repo. Let me see if I have the link there. I think I do. New York. No, it's actually a GitHub project myself. The COVID-19 stats GitHub. Let me see if I can extract where this repo lives.
Is there any way to get it from the CDC?
Probably, the CDC has a different quality of data. I haven't just, processed that at the level that I did with the New York Times database. But I don't see why not, is probably what I should say. And let me make it clear. Here's the source of the data, which is in the chat.
Have we run out of toilet paper since early 2020?
I have plenty, so we'll see.
That was so wild.
Yeah, that
All right.
was. Yeah.
All right, it's 10 minutes after the hour.
I'm a silly bird.
Got a few more people in the meantime. Welcome, Ali, Alma, Ray, Sazon. I think I might have said hi to Tim. What's up, everyone? 12 people. It's going to have to be as good as it's going to be for today. All right. How do I move my thing here? Why are you not moving appropriately? Crap. Okay, good times. All right, everyone. Welcome. It's another SacPy, January 6th, 2022. Oh man, it's weird to see 2022. Oh, hey,
Never
Earl.
thought we'd make it.
Yeah, right. That was 2021. That was an interesting one. Don't know if I want to repeat on that one. We survived. It's good enough. Just calmly enter 2022. Nobody make any sudden moves. Maybe this one will work a little bit better. All hail our glorious founder, Josh Miller. He got us started in February of some year, 2017, I believe. I forget. We've been in a number of physical locations. When I joined I joined October 2019, we were in a place called Urban Hive. I think if we're going to go back in person in Sacramento again, we'll probably start again in Hacker Lab, but Zoom has been a lot of fun. We've increased our reach as far as geographic locations. The commute's gotten a lot better. Sorry, the beverages are a little hard to just distribute this time around, but if you got them, drink them. So last time we were here, people got a little excited in the comments, or rather in the opening. So I thought I'd bring the code of conduct back up just to remind everyone, this meetup group is dedicated to providing a harassment-free community experience for everyone, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, pronouns, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion, or lack thereof. We don't tolerate harassment of our community members in any form. Sexual language and imagery is not appropriate for any venue, including talks, workshops, parties, Twitter, and other online media. Community members violating these rules may be sanctioned or expelled from the community at the discretion of the community organizers. Now, what happened last time was, I think, all in good fun, but irked some people. But the punitive action we took was we just trimmed a couple minutes off the beginning of the YouTube, but anyway, thought I'd bring that one back. For those of you that were trying to get on the SacTech Slack in the past, I had issues with the links. This link should work. It'll bring you through a little accept of the terms and conditions of service, but that should get you on there. SacTech is a number of different organizations similar to SacPy that meet up and talk about tech. I don't know how many moved on to Zoom. I'm sure there's a few that remained in person. Who knows? But yeah, there's a whole bunch of people there. I think SacTech is a consulting company or something like that. But pretty neat community. I think there's hundreds, thousands of people maybe on that Slack channel. But excuse me.
I guess you're not paying for it, so it could be just as many as, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm okay with it. But yeah, check them out. They got a whole bunch of different topics there. There's like a JavaScript group. There's an AWS group. It's like a game design group.
Their civic tech group is pretty awesome. They'll actually go and do consulting with other state agencies. One of the members who does that a lot is actually the one who taught me Git a couple of years ago at Free Code Camp.
Very cool. So there we go. Excuse me, I keep inhaling something. We also have a Discord that I run for my company, Brazen Studios. That one's still getting going. Brian's got one too. We can we'll put some links in the description for the YouTube on this one. All right. We also have some social media stuff. Got a Twitter, slowly growing. I think we cracked 100 users recently, or 100 followers recently. Hooray! Got a subreddit that I'm mostly scared of. I posted the Zoom link in there one time. We got Zoom bombed. That was very fun. I figure one of these days, someone who knows something about Reddit will show up and show us how it's done as far as managing that. Got a Facebook group and a page too. I post pretty much the same thing on all of those, but if we were getting anywhere serious, I guess it'll be nice we have them. But follow us, join the subreddit, join the group, like the page, all that. All right, so like to do a quick just headshot of everyone. I'm going to take off share here real quick and switch to gallery view. If you're willing, turn on your camera. If you got like a funny hat or like a mask or some glasses or something like that, throw them on. We'll do a quick headshot. Oh, also, if you have small exotic animals like sprinkles or twinkles there. All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Do a few more. All right. Thank you, everyone, for playing along. Another round of SacPy Brady Bunch picture. We did it. All right. So, okay. All right. Before we lead into Bryan's, I've been running this company, Brazen Studios, for a while. It's sort of a consulting company, and I've been trying to do a quarterly update. So I thought I'd do a real quick update on where we're at. I started out with this character, Frymatic. Oh my, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Uh-oh. Snafu. All right, so let's make that a little smaller. There we go. My name is Woody Hooten. I've got a GitHub/SoundCloud/Twitter type persona called Frymatic. Name comes from, I don't really know where it comes from. Something to do with cooking. I gave it the title Maestro because it's something to do with like music. Maestro is like a chef or a conductor of an orchestra. But frying is probably my favorite area of cooking because it's the most punishing. If you do it wrong, you burn stuff. But if you do it right, it can be delicious. It's also the thing that you do like right towards the end. Otherwise, it's kind of gross. So like timing is everything. And I think of sometimes when it comes to like software development, especially in the hackathon space, it's very much a performance art. And so cooking and frying and coding and all that. That's why we call it Frymatic. But Brazen Studios, consulting company, been doing corp-to-corp contracts. Starting off with Lenovo. I spent a whole bunch of last year doing hackathons, and they tried to bring me on as a developer community manager. I lasted all of 3 days before I went on to the next one, but gave them a pitch for a few things. Hopefully it's cool. But this is SacPy, and I've been making my inroads into more serious software development for quite some time now. So thankfully, I ended up landing a role over at Salesforce. I don't work there. I actually work for my own company, Brazen Studios, and they hire me through some like Byzantine series of arrangements via staffing companies and such, corp to corp. But I'm working on making Slack bots, which is perfect because it's a continuation of a project I worked on in 2020, lovingly called Jarvis. I didn't call it that. The kids that work there were like, "Oh, call it Jarvis." I did solve the IP problem though. Changed the definition of it and the definition of the acronym. But basically, Salesforce bought Slack for a lot of money end of 2020, and I'm on the M&A team working on integrations there. So hopefully, I'll be able to present a little bit more on that in the future. Should be fun. And then last but not least, for this quarterly update, I wanted to talk a little bit about some developments behind the scenes in SacPy. Starting to look at getting new sponsors. People have been reaching out asking whether or not people from the community had interest in talking about potential positions. And I basically told him, hey, if you sponsor us on a monthly basis, I'll let you give us a little video plug to talk about your business and talk about any open roles. So hopefully that dovetails nicely, get a few bucks to spruce up our operations while at the same time, hopefully place some of the community members. But that's it for the Fragmatic Update Brazen Studios quarterly report. Any questions before we move on to our headliner? Cool. Yeah, not much to in there. All right, so heading back to the next one. We've got our headliner tonight, Bryan Jenks. He's going to be talking a little bit about programming, productivity, and research. Now, often people will come in and give a presentation. This one's going to be a little bit more of a sort of tete-a-tete interview style. I'll kick things off by just getting started with saying like, hey, Bryan, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about it, and then I'll start getting into that list of questions we talked about yesterday.
Sure. My name's on the screen, but a lot of the more important points. I am a public sector employee in the state of California, and currently I work for Covered California down in South Sac. Staying in South Sac. Prior to that, I worked in Department of Corrections for the Healthcare Services branch for about a little over 5 years. And I started from like the very bottom, from an office assistant all the way to research data specialist. I'm an IT associate right now. I've been various levels of analyst, specialist, but basically taught myself coding and tech things in general, starting with the state, and really actually, frighteningly, it was actually Excel that got me started down this road, because everyone loves their spreadsheets in the state. And so I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is cool. And then I figured out, oh, wait, I can automate the crap out of my life if I learn this VBA thing. Then, a little bit down the road, I realized, oh my God, this is horrible. What have I done? And now I still have VBA code that is still used across the entire state in like 36 state prisons. So sorry. But from there, I started really getting into like other languages and things. Now I'm just a voracious IT nerd. But I have a YouTube channel that's been growing pretty nicely. About to hit 20,000, which is pretty cool. Do it in my spare time. Talk a lot about like Linux and stuff, programming, and then I started getting more into like niche topics of like the personal knowledge management, ADHD specific things, and stuff around those different topics. Yeah, I'm really eclectic, so I'm just going to leave it there because there's a lot of stuff that I just don't even bother trying to remember all my bullet points. So.
Luckily, I got all those bullet points, but pretty good overview of what we'll talk about tonight. I will start by saying, when I was doing my research on this guy, definitely found that to be very true. This guy is eclectic. I appreciate that. Interesting people often have interesting roots. And Bryan, like myself, is a fairly athletic dude. So why don't we start there? He's had this interesting blend of activities that he's willing to list on his LinkedIn. He started out in the gymnastics world and has run that gymnastics into like a very interesting space. I think everyone's familiar with the concept of parkour. It's where you run around in cities and jump off things and do flips and stuff like that. And Ryan's run a community for a number of years. Is that still going?
No, the NorCal Parkour group that myself and a couple other friends were running kind of petered out several years ago, and some of the people have long since moved to different states. But we ran that for about maybe 7 years. Sometimes we have events where we'd have up to about 50 people in attendance. We got some really great group pictures. Some different news media outlets, I think the SAC News and Review or whatever that one local newspaper is, did an article on us. We got a couple of those. And then I told you about the one where I think SacPy interviewed me, and then corrections saw that I just mentioned like, oh, I work here. I didn't go into detail, but they saw that I mentioned that I work at one of the prisons at the time. and they got that and just blasted that to all 77,000 state employees who work for corrections. And I walk into prison one day, the correctional officer's like, "You're the guy." I'm like, "What the hell did I do?" But yeah, it's no longer going anymore, but it was a very fun run. I'm actually trying to get back to the shape more so we can do some more of that again with some of the other groups.
So how does one get into that? Is it necessary to have a gymnastics background? It seems like it.
I don't know. I never did gymnastics. I just coached it, but I coached all the pre-competitive levels of men's gymnastics. So up until they started actually competing in teams, I taught anywhere from like 5 to 14. And at one point I was running all of the boys classes for an entire gym. It's the one in Elk Grove, if anyone's heard of Byers, formerly Byers, it's now Elevate Gymnastics. But I worked there for a little over a year, I think. But I could do everything I taught them, including some things that I shouldn't have taught them, like I taught some kids to backflip when they shouldn't have known that yet, but they're really good. But no, you don't have to have any of that, because I didn't when I first started. I still have some pictures. It was very gangly and uncoordinated.
Awesome. All right, what's the gnarliest accident you saw in parkour?
Well, I'm going to preface this with, people think people get injured a lot more frequently doing parkour than they actually do. The injury rate is drastically lower than things than like football or soccer, like drastically lower. I even did like a very amateurish study and tried to gather information based on hundreds of different people's input. And yeah, the injury rate is incredibly low. But I was at this one time at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and great architecture to jump on. But there was this one gap that a lot of the more mature athletes, we just call people tresseurs, that's the French word, but they were doing this one gap jump, and it's not, it's a jump and it's over a very large, high gap. So, you screwed up, bad day, but people know their limits, and I've never really seen anything horrible. Well, a very young teenager boy did not respect his limits and went for it and did not make it and fell down. And I think he actually had to go to the hospital, couldn't fly home for a few days because of a concussion. Ultimately, he was fine. Very good lesson for him. And, the group is still like not banned or anything from that area, and people can still do things because of the reputation and the rapport they've built. But like, that's the lesson, is that you have to respect your limits and, steadily expand them. You can't just go nuts and go balls to the wall on some of this stuff. You gotta be careful.
All right. So parkour, safer than some would expect, but mind your limits. Got it. So, all right. So carrying on with the activities, slightly less daring, but no less involved, I imagine. You've done a whole bunch of like historical reenactment type stuff. You've got the Scottish halberdiers. Halberd's like a pole arm, right?
Yeah, the halberd I actually made myself with my grandpa, and we like hammered out the steel after plasma cutting it out of some sheet of steel, and sharpened it, hammered it out, and put it onto a piece of not really sturdy wood. But it's taller than me. For reference, I'm 6'6", so I'm pretty tall already. But the thing is like 8 feet tall, and so yeah, we do full-on routines where we'll be decked out in full armor, which I also made myself. But we'll be decked out in full armor, kilts, a lot of heavy wool, and usually almost everybody in that group is like 6 foot or taller. Like there's like 3 people in that group that are 6'9". So like it's the one time where I actually feel like I can look at people and I feel like I'm normal. So but there's usually like at the Pleasanton Scottish Games, there's usually like at maybe 25, the biggest fair they do. And you get a bunch of these big dudes in full armor with 8 foot tall halberds. And we got all kinds of knives and swords and axes and stuff all over us. But we'll do, it's a military reenactment group. So we do like full on trooping routines where we march in different formations and perform like mock battle tactics, where if we're going to go against infantry or cavalry. And all the commands and everything is in Scottish Gaelic. So we have to learn Gaelic to do it, at least enough to learn the commands. And so we would actually respond in a military fashion, marching in step, Gaelic commands, and doing different battle formations with all of this gear on for fun on the weekends. It was a really fun activity.
Well, all right. Could you, off the top of your head, give us an example of a Scottish Gaelic command?
Oh yeah. Actually, funny story. There's that one show, Outlander, and they actually did speak a little bit of Gaelic in that show. It's primarily English, obviously, so people can understand it. But because we act as a military group when we're doing the fairs, it's ingrained in me, and I take it really seriously when I do that. So like I actually heard one of the commands and it was shouted in the show, and I literally like felt myself jerk up like I need to be doing something. Because if you're going to be like either at attention, or if you're like if our captain is like stopping the marching of the formation to like stop and then like turn or do something, he'll just yell Standiv Anish, and like Anish is like now, and so every command is like that, and then followed by now to like actually execute. So I heard somebody in that show say that, like yell it, and I'm like, I need to stand up at attention right now, and I'm like laying on my floor watching the show.
Oh man, that's amazing. All right, so you made a bunch of your stuff though. I think that's probably the most interesting part for me, because Python being a great language for quickly making things, the whole like maker aspect of that thing's pretty cool. So
this whole thing is my new workbench.
Nice. All right, so on top of him doing the reenactments, he's also, Bryan, you've also involved yourself with doing the leather work. You've got this group called Norseman Leatherworks that's sort of a hobby on the side.
Yeah, it's a hobby that pays for itself. It's a full-on business, but I don't make a lot with it because I don't really advertise it anymore. But I mostly made things to fund my ability to buy more things for this hobby. But like there's my sewing machine behind me.
Oh yeah, look at that straight behind you.
But all this is leatherworking stuff and some more supplies over there, and my stacks of leather up in the closet.
Awesome. Now, it's not just the Scottish stuff you've done. You've also done like Viking things as well.
Yep. Currently in a Viking guild, I think almost 2-3 years now. COVID doesn't really count, so like 2 years of just COVID time, which is basically not doing anything. But I'm currently in the Viking guild right now and building up my kit for that. I have a box of stuff right there that's all Viking kit. But I just bought a bunch of canvas to get my own pop-up tent. I just need to get the studs to make the wood beams for it.
Nice. Do you ever sail to events and then burn your ships?
No, but when I do go to Norway, there's a Viking market in Gudvangen that I want to go to, and they do actually have Viking ship rides that you can ride on in the fjords.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. Wait, you said that's in Norway, like actual Norway?
Yeah, hopefully if COVID doesn't ruin it. I've been trying to go to Norway for years now.
Nice. Good times. All right. Well, let's see. What else have you done along the way? I understand you're still in school.
Yep, I'm in school full time right now at Western Governors University. I'm going for a bachelor's in data management and data analytics, and I'm getting kind of burnt out again on school. I remembered why I didn't like school, but I was going to go for the master's, but I might take a break if I even bother to do it, because I'm not doing it for any reason other than it's just fun and fill the time.
Right. Yeah. And if it's not fun and you're getting burnt out, then also you already have a job.
Yeah, I don't need the degree. It's just kind of most people, like a lot of people in government, don't respect a lot of your skills or experience if you don't have a paper that tells them that. But like I have an associate in physical education, and here I am writing government software and giving advice to people 3 levels above me. So like they want the paper, fine, I'll give them a paper. I've learned some interesting stuff though about databases, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, there's a whole lot about that with the paper. I could get into that. All right, getting a little bit more on topic for Python type stuff. You talked a little bit about your experience in working in the corrections department. Now, when you got started there, you pretty much started going up the ranks like right away.
I plan it so that I would already have my examination done and be applying for jobs like a month or 2 months before my probation is up, so that by the time I could accept an offer, I would hit it right at the end of my probation. I'd start my next job. And I basically did that up until my current point.
Well, all right. So you started in staff services as an analyst?
No, I started as an office assistant technician.
There we go. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, you've got this huge list. It was like office assistant, and then you went office technician, and then staff services analyst, then health program specialist, then IT associate, back to staff services analyst, then governmental program analyst, then data specialist, then data analyst. How did you do much Python through all of that, or did that come in later?
No, it comes in later. Yeah, I had a lot of different because the state you can do like training and development positions where you don't get paid to do that job, but you can get more experience, and eventually after like a year you qualify to just take that job now. So like that's why there's a couple of different forays of me trying to figure out where I wanted to take my career. But by and large, it was from the bottom to mid-level staff services series until I went into research data series, because that was the more like, it's like between business and IT, but you're not just managing servers and you're not just pushing spreadsheets. So it was like a middle ground where I could actually do code, but still be relatively close to business logic and in the thick of things on both ends. But Python came in after those positions. When I went from a research data analyst at corrections, I went to the Cal EPA's water board as a specialist, but then I got the actual offer I really wanted after, bureaucracy, papers had to shuffle. But then I got into the IT associate job I'm in now with Southern California. And this is the place where I learned Python. But at that point, I've done programming for 4+ years at that point. So like picking up another language was not that difficult. And now I'm just, learning all the new shiny parts of Python, stuff like all of the different uses for different Dunder methods in object-oriented programming, decorators, different libraries that can let me do profiling, and all different other kinds of fun, shiny parts of the language beyond just print 1 + 1.
All right, so Dunder methods, that's like main and init and all of that.
Yeah, just like there's easily over just what I have notes on right now, at least I think 50 or something Dunder methods that you can just use with just classes and object-oriented code that make a lot of different things really easy to build and automate. Because if every time, to keep the example simple, if like every time you initialize a class, you run the init Dunder method, then if your class is initializing a screen for your user to look at, I don't do this, by the way, but if every time you initialize that class, you want to show a screen, you can initialize it using the init Dunder method. Just initialize the class. Here's a screen, and whatever data you passed into that class constructor, there you go. There's the screen, and whatever configurable components you have to it. But simple example, but yeah, there's a whole microcosm of just Dunder method stuff to explore. So it's been a nice little rabbit hole.
Nice. And for anyone wondering, that is Dunder refers to double underscore. I'm sure you've seen them. They're functions that have a double underscore and then a name and then a double underscore and then their parameters. I need to learn more about those. You were talking about them yesterday and I was like, ooh, I know what those are, but I don't think I actually knew what they were called. So before you made the switch over to cover California where you're at now, and that was just beginning of last year, end of Q1?
Yeah, I started March 8th last year.
Nice. Well, congrats. You're almost at a year.
Time for next promotion.
Yeah, that's right. Promotion, the probationary period's over. Got to line up the next one, right? Cool. So you said you did some VBA work that might still be out there in the corrections world. That's what you were doing primarily over on the corrections side of things?
Not officially. The staff services series doesn't really have any sort of technical work like that. Because I was more technically oriented, I kind of got to do things where I would QA a lot of the a lot of the outcome from the SQL development team there. So like they would write queries and build reports, and then I would validate that the records showing up on these SSRS reports, SQL Server Reporting Services, I think that's the acronym. But any of the records popping up on these things for doctors to look at for their patients, I would then go into those patients' charts, validate that the logic grabbed these people correctly, the actual order IDs and different, all this stuff lined up. And if not, I would troubleshoot different things, but as one of those jobs that I did there. But VBA is not really well supported, but it's the only language I could really run with at the time. So I made stuff and it worked and it did a lot of really valuable stuff. And then it spread around for better or worse at this point. But thankfully, these tools that are still around are modular and lightweight enough and aren't dependent or tied into any sort of critical system at all that it's not that big of a concern. But it's like, they probably should have written that in something different.
Awesome. So you got to cover California beginning of last year, and you said that's where you really started picking up Python.
Yeah, I started working for a really great boss, and we're on an IT shop, and we're doing DevOps. So we're using all of the different Azure services, Azure repos, pipelines, test plans, boards, everything, all of the stuff Azure. And it was my first exposure to all those tools. And yeah, it's been a crazy adventure learning all these different pieces of technology and then a new language to boot. And so then we started really developing, after we got there, a couple of people who started with me, we all started focusing primarily on documenting all of the ecosystem, all the services, everything that we had going on right now. So we focused primarily on just figure out where we're at and what's going on, and then document it all, which is when I pushed for like Markdown, Git version control of those documents, and yeah, Git with Markdown and YAML front matter and all that to manage our current documentation repo. And then we started actually building tools and applications with Python. And I can't show too much of it because I don't, well, one, it's really ugly still. I haven't gone through and done a refactor. It's still MVP, but it runs in production. But I made my first real Python application, like real application, is one I made here, that deals with our ticketing service. Because we're in IT, we deal with tickets. It's just a fact of life. But because of just the ticketing service that we use is janky. I have to use an automation service. If anyone knows about the archaic Microsoft Orchestrator or Service Center Service Manager, I freaking hate that thing. But basically, it's like visual programming, but automation and low code, no code, low code. It's a freaking nightmare to deal with. But basically, I have to deal with different portions of that to automate, getting information out of the ticket service into a SQL database I made. And from the SQL database, I pull in information into my app, and then I push data back to the database. But then how do I tell this other, evil service to pull information and update the tickets going in reverse? Well, then there is no API. That, again, great service. So I have to do something where I set up this weird sort of service thing in that app where I have to watch a folder. And as soon as I put a file in there, it takes the name of the file is the ticket ID, and inside of the ticket, so that file might be content, but actually I don't need to do that. I basically just make a file, and it says, oh, file, grab the name, that's the ticket. Okay, search the database for this ticket's info, grab info, update ticket. So basically I have to spark this thing by making a text file in a directory that then just immediately gets deleted after it does its operation. But then you take all that information from the database, you process the ticket, who am I assigning it to? That updates the database, which then updates the service. But then it also works with the Azure DevOps REST API to create our work items for our Azure DevOps board. And it fills that with a lot of the boilerplate template information, but also information from the database. And after all that's done and you're finishing up this whole routine, it will also then use different email libraries. There's two different email libraries I use in Python. One of them is if you actually wanted to manually review it, it uses kind of I think it's just the Windows COM or component object model library for email. And then if I want to automate it and I don't want it to have to, if the user shouldn't look at it, like if it's running on a server, I'd use just the standard email library and just use like SMTP with TLS and all that jazz. But it'll send an email to the user, again, with template stuff. It's just a giant F string that fills in with all the different values from the database record for that ticket. And then after it's done with the email, it basically just loops back to the main home screen, and it kind of cascades through various different screens, API calls, verifying that you have connectivity because we use a VPN, lots of different checks, balances, configuration management by storing a YAML file in the user's like app data local storage directory. That's kind of like it's like the bastardized version of XDG standard on Linux, but does all that. And I even just added recently automated metrics. So it will like, cache the time of the duration it take you to process a single ticket through the while loop. And it updates a metrics table in the database, which then feeds into triggers and store procedures that build all these different reports for, basically it took 138 hours of dev time to make this thing. You've saved 4.4 or 4 hours of actual work time because this is how long it took you to process tickets before. Here's how long it takes you to do it now with the app. And so in 300 plus days, it'll actually be paid off of investment versus reward. And all these different metrics all update dynamically every time you insert a new record into the table because of triggers and store procedures. But yeah, I actually have a couple slides about it, but just to give the sneak peek is the project right now, ugly as it is, has 2,266 lines of Python and 822 lines of T-SQL involved, which is fun. Took me about a month or 2 months to put this thing together because of distractions and ADHD brain.
Sure. A sizable program though. You said you had a few slides?
Yeah. I can share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Hoping this works. Are you seeing Keynote?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't used Keynote before because gross.
See the last slide. There we go.
Yeah, but this is like, the language is involved. It just has a couple basic things. TOML because I'm using poetry with Python. YAML because I have different configuration files, and then the Azure pipelines because we don't have anything stored on Git. The agency doesn't use Git at the moment, or GitHub. And I've been pushing to actually do GitHub for the agency and actually have some level of open source software support and outreach. It's on our roadmap, and I really want to do that because being able to do all this stuff on GitHub with the native GitHub features and GitHub Actions would be really awesome. Markdown for some documentation in there. JSON for, again, more configurations. And I think, oh yeah, for the REST API. Yeah, lots of T-SQL and Python. And primarily used VS Code and Azure Data Studio and SQL Server Management Studio for SQL stuff. But yeah, a lot of the other slides are really just about this application was more than just the application stuff. It was also kind of like my foray and exploration into a lot of the really cool stuff you can do and automate with Azure services. So like I had to scrub a couple things from this, but like I have a couple different Azure pipelines I set up where I got like Dependabot working for our service. Let me see if I can actually zoom in here a little bit. If not, no. Okay, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But basically Dependabot, I got it working because there's not a lot of stuff that works natively from the GitHub Actions into Azure pipelines. So I basically had to treat the Azure pipeline instance as basically, for all intents and purposes, like a virtual machine or a Docker container. So in that container, or whatever that instance is that's running, I then actually kind of bootstrap everything by installing all of the software into that. And then instead of just running a packaged like job where you can just run an action on GitHub, I kind of have to install all this stuff and then actually start running it and pass it a bunch of parameters into the Docker container. And basically I have Dependabot running for this app. So anytime one of the library dependencies updates, it will open a pull request and show me all of the different cliff notes of anything involved of what's changed, so I can just merge it in or review it. I have another one set up for Superlinter, which is mainly what we have set up for our documentation repo, because we document a lot of different things about code. And just in general, we wanted to have like a catch-all. We have the Superlinter that, again, I ported to Azure pipelines. so that any code of like, I don't even know how many languages they support, but I think we're using the slim version because of what we actually use, but dozens of languages that can be linted. So if somebody does not actually match the specification or the standards that I have set out for Markdown, there's like 80 or something different Markdown linting rules. And I went through like all of them, and I determined like what our standard is for Markdown documentation, and this thing will enforce it. You can't merge your pull request until you have actually, passed the job through, revisions or commits. And then I have another one.
Have you thought of restructured text, which has more of a tighter specification?
Restructured text is actually on my roadmap. I've been trying to get around to it because I've been looking at that because I wanted to integrate that with Sphinx and take advantage of all of that whole ecosystem, especially with all the Python projects we're doing.
We should should have a talk because I use it pretty heavily with my documentation, and I have a lot of tricks that are not. It's one of the ironies. Sphinx documentation is pretty bad, so the documentation of the documentation tool is pretty terrible. But I've got stuff that isn't, part of the main documentation up and running. Basically, I have a lot of practical ways of making it do stuff I want it to do. And so, yeah, if you're interested, we could have a conversation about that.
Absolutely. I love documentation tools. Yeah, on the roadmap, I would love to do more with restructured text. It's just, I got so much on my learning roadmap is ridiculously long. And I map it all out in Azure Data and Azure boards, and it's like dozens of work items of just all the different stuff I want to learn, which is, well, I'm going to have to be pretty busy for the next few years. But this last pipeline that I set up for my team was actually probably the hardest of any of these because it's not like a package thing like use Dependabot or use the superlinter, but I wanted to get automated testing of whatever test suite we have for any particular Python application or any repo we're using. And so what I actually had to set up is this multi-phase thing where, pip is pretty much the standard for a lot of these packages, but we're using Poetry in our office just because Poetry is amazing. So I basically had to it's an instance of Linux, so bootstrap Poetry. Now that you got Poetry, download the repo, but I also had to add a pre-commit hook so that every time you push a commit from the repo, it also updates the requirements.txt, which is only used for pip. So I use Poetry, but then I also have so basically I have to manage things for both Poetry and pip. Then pip installs everything. It actually will run all the test suite, the dependency, it'll install the last dependencies for running the test suite, run the test coverage stuff, build the actual report deliverable. Then there's some actual built-in functionality that takes that output, puts it in somewhere into Azure test plans. And you get a pretty looking output like this, where you get a breakdown of all of your tests in your test suite and the results of how you did and what your test coverage is for your current application, among other pre-commit hooks that we use. And this is kind of like the stuff that I wanted to play with and set up for these types of applications. So all of this was just all going on at once. So it's not just me developing this really cool CLI TUI app. It was also just all of the backend stuff of dealing with databases, REST APIs, figuring out all of the Azure services and things that we can leverage to improve the quality of development. But now stuff like this is modular. I can take this testing job, replace a couple different components in this, like the repo name or something, and we can put this onto any Python project we have in the entire department or team. So
really cool. Well, you talked a little bit about all the things you have planned for yourself to learn. And you mentioned a little bit about how, like anyone, you find yourself getting distracted. And when doing my research on your background, I found it kind of refreshing that you talk pretty openly about ADHD, but especially about your solutions for that. And it looks like you have a pretty common theme, especially on your YouTube, of PKM, which is personal knowledge management. And there's a bunch of things that you've done. You were telling me what the kind of hierarchy of tools and concepts were, but basically you do personal knowledge management in a thing called Zettelkasten, and you use Obsidian. Am I getting that right?
Close.
Okay.
If PKM, I like to equate it to this simple example. If PKM is like web development, Zettelkasten is like
the IDE, like, or is it Chrome?
I think I got my example wrong. I think Zettelkasten is kind of like web development, but like the application I actually do the work in would be like the JavaScript framework, which is Obsidian. So like Zettelkasten is PKM, Zettelkasten kind of interchangeable. Like PKM is how do you manage your knowledge? Zettelkasten is an approach to that. And then I use that approach within an application called Obsidian that is geared for that type of work.
Nice. And yeah, Obsidian, that was the one that came up most frequently. Now, I understand Obsidian works primarily with Markdown. Is that right? Or
yeah.
Okay. And so what I was seeing from your content was a whole bunch of like these like interactive mind map type things. And I was wondering, do you have any of those readily accessible? And could you show us what one of those looks like?
Absolutely.
I thought this was fascinating. I try to do stuff kind of like this, but I think Bryan's taken it to the logical extreme, and it's kind of exciting to see where he might go with it, because he's definitely documented the progression over the years.
It doesn't let me share just a desktop. That's odd. But yeah, so like this is what my main vault for Obsidian. Like this is the D3JS. I think it's D3JS that they use in the backend for developing the graph. But yeah, it's an Electron app that has very minimal libraries. I'm actually pretty social with the developers, and they would like to rely on as few external dependencies as possible. There's like code mirror for different formatting stuff. They actually have live preview now in here, but this is like the actual graph of everything I have in here. And I have like 3,200 notes in here, which is pretty good. Yeah, there's a whole, like I have hours and hours and hours of videos on my channel where I just talk about like how I approach things in here and what I do with this. Yeah, there's just a lot of different stuff now. There's ADHD, a lot of stuff on that. And yeah, so I'm also doing,
that one should be kind of all over the place. So no.
Yeah. And then if I open like the graph from this one, it'll open up the local graph of what's just connected to this note, not just the entire global thing. There's just like a lot.
Cool.
But yeah, I use it to keep track of information I read from research papers, podcasts, videos, articles, anything. There's like a whole bunch of different metadata management where I went on to the other side. Like managing different tags, which I use primarily emojis because I'm pretty visual. And yeah, it's bi-directional links. You can see things that link to the actual topic versus what the topic actually links out to. And I can see where different things are referenced. There's like people have actually put in different NLP stuff and modeling of the knowledge you currently have in the application. I don't know why this is not working at the moment, but yeah, it's a whole can of worms. It's so flexible, and there's over like I think 400 plugins at this point, and there's more coming every day that you can really do whatever you want with this thing. Yeah, it's endless. And for right now, I'm actually doing another tool. I think I need to switch the screen share view to primarily for my tech notes or like my dev log. I'm using primarily VS Code and a tool which with another developer that I talk to a lot is called Dendron. And this has something sort of similar where it's a different approach, and the specifics are really just probably no one really cares about the specifics, but it also has like graph view and bidirectional linking and information. So I don't even know how many notes I have in Dendron, but it's probably over 1,300 of just tech-based notes. Yeah, a lot of Python, mostly Python, but I also have a lot of C++, SQL, and other notes in here too.
That's awesome. And you're maintaining this for personal use? This is just sort of your second brain?
Yeah, I mean, it serves a purpose practically for me. But then I also like my devlog, and then lots of aspects of my main research blog or vault are all public. And because I do stuff on YouTube, like I give away a lot of my templates and things for people who want to have them if they see like the different content that I have. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with these different applications and managing information. So I can say like go to C++, I want to look at different libraries and say, oh, what's the vector library got for me? Okay, cool. What spans off from this? And I can say look at different functions or whatever I might have for it. Modifiers. So I just don't have any notes on those, but stubs to come back to and fill out later on. Python, there's definitely a lot of, I have so many libraries documented in here. I just found this one was a really cool one, PyInstrument for doing profiling, which looked really, really cool. So I'm thinking about setting this up as a kind of like a debugging flag for any sort of CLI app. You can automatically open the profiler's flame graph in the browser just like that, which would be really cool.
What's a flame graph?
This thing, where you can actually go through the profile of the code. So seeing the call stack, and then you can actually zoom in and out and then see the different function calls and details of it. Kind of like this, but this is the actual flame graph. It's a very common thing in profiling to tune your code to be a little bit more efficient or faster, or identifying the bottlenecks.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. So that navigation you were doing up on the tabs at the top there, that's generally how you like relocate some note that you had from the past, or like, you know, you had a stub that you want to fill out.
Yep, I mean, it's got fuzzy findings, so I can just search for it and fuzzy search my way to success, or I can use the different commands for the Dendron extension, because that's all Dendron is in VS Code, is just an extension or a pack of extensions. So if like, oh, I have a PDF in here that I linked to from a note, but it just opens up the raw PDF source code, which is useless. So how do I display a PDF? Well, there's a VS Code extension to display PDFs. There you go. So you just add extensions for what you want, and just like plugins for Obsidian, it's pretty modular with whatever you want to actually achieve and get done.
Very cool. Well, so I noticed in your GitHub, one of your Python projects was Obsidian oriented, and I think it's called Obsidian CLI. Yeah, I presume that's for making notes primarily.
Yeah, I sent. I think I'm trying to find that window. There we go. What I found for that, sure if I can find the damn thing. There it is. This is kind of like I've been so devoted to the projects I've been working on at my job that I have neglected my personal projects a lot. But a lot of what I've been doing on my job is also learning different libraries, tools, approaches, paradigms, coding patterns. And so this is kind of like a very, very MVP. And like, as you can see right here, not very dry code. So this definitely needs to be refactored, but I haven't touched this in, I don't know how long. Well, Git will tell me. Months. Yeah. August. So yeah. So this needs to be massively refactored, but yeah, this is mostly used because I prefer to live in terminals and on the CLI. So I actually have a ThinkPad X220, my favorite computer over here. Nice. Ancient. Don't try to video edit on it. I learned from personal experience. It'll go to over 90 degrees Celsius and die. Whoa. But yeah, I love the old ThinkPads, but I put Arch Linux on it, which you guys were roasting me in the chat, I think in the last Python meetup, about me being a masochist for doing Arch Linux, but I really like Arch Linux. So I like living in terminals. And when I get my Arch Linux builds, going, I primarily use only terminal applications. So like email in the terminal with NeoMut and Not Much, and calendars in the CLI with CalCurse, or task management in the CLI with Taskle or Task Warrior, and endless CLI applications. I pretty much did everything primarily in the CLI, which then also makes it extensible and scriptable. So I would also write endless bash scripts, which is why a lot of my projects on my GitHub are also primarily bash scripts. Like I was trying to work on an Anki clone, which is space repetition software, primarily through bash. So it's just a single bash file with a couple dependencies on on FCF for fuzzy finding, and bat, which is a Rust rewrite of the GNU core util cat. And yeah, it basically just is a flashcard program in the terminal that deals with CSVs and parses them to give you space repetition flashcards in your terminal. It's just a giant bash script, which is probably one of the few projects I actually had like pull requests and people actually contributing something to, but it's just a lot of bash.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you mean flashcards like the studying methodology?
Yeah. Are you able to see my terminal window right now?
All I can see is GitHub.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pain that Zoom only lets you show a single window. But I don't even know if I have it installed on my system anymore because I just use Anki. Oh no, I do. Oh sweet. Okay, I can show a demo of that.
Oh yeah.
Let's get iTerm started here. There we go. iTerm. But
could you zoom the text? Oh, that's much better.
Yeah, you just call it running flash, which is flash.sh or fla.sh, but you call it flash, and then it will actually search. No, the previous kind of cut short there, but it searches a particular directory, which I think is just the XDG standard of .local share for wherever your CSVs are held, and like you can have endless CSVs and directories, which then because it's running through FCF, it has fuzzy finding. So I could like look for CompTIA for any of the CompTIA stuff I was studying. But the default is just a sample deck that it gives you. And I can say deck, and then it gives you this interface of letting you do space repetition, and you score it. And then based on your score, it'll actually update the CSVs. And then quit. And then if we actually looked at it,
CompTIA is like A+ certification body, right?
Yeah, part of WGU's curriculum is actually a lot of industry renowned certifications, and like at the end of my program, I'll have a Udacity nano degree as well as 4 CompTIA certifications. Like I already have my A+, I have my Project Plus. I did the beta for Data Plus, so we'll see if I get that in February just by doing a beta tester. And then I'm taking Network Plus right now, and if you get A+ and Network Plus, you get like Operations Specialist for free.
Yeah.
So endless CompTIA. Yeah, basically after using the flashcards, you can score them, and it will actually give you the numerical scores in here. And right now it's just doing colon delimited files like the password file on Linux, but this is ultimately is probably not the best, because usually the best standard of CSVs is doing pipe delimited, but then if you're on a Unix command line, pipe delimited can be a problem. So yeah, I was going to do like a giant rewrite of this in Python and kind of do something similar or simpler, so I could actually do like a better data format like JSON or something that can actually escape text, so people could have colons, pipes, or whatever special characters they wanted, and hell, even maybe images or blob type of formats. But at this point, I don't really feel like rewriting Anki when Anki exists, and I've moved on to other projects, but it's in Bash.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, it seems like you kind of throw code at pretty much everything you're doing to some degree. We talked a little bit about your automation habits. We say automate the boring stuff, but you're saying automate everything.
Yeah.
What's the next
thing? Automate as much of my life as possible.
What's currently on the cutting board for manual about to be fully automated?
I've been working on VS Code tasks, which are usually used for building, like doing builds of whatever apps or services you're working on. but I've kind of been repurposing them to do different CLI commands. And I'm having trouble trying to actually pipe the output of those CLI commands to the clipboard, because like you can actually access your system's clipboard through usually the command line. I think even the Windows command line can even do that, but I'm having trouble getting that. I think it's just because of the execution environment. But usually right now I'm trying to automate a lot of the stuff with Dendron and trying to get my inputs. Like if I'm going to watch these 3 YouTube videos on Fast API with Python, then I want to have notes built out stubs to fill out later. And what if I want to have certain pieces of metadata? Like this is the channel, this is the URL of the channel, this is the data came out, this is the data I reviewed it, that's null for now. And building all that stuff, which is basically what Obsidian CLI was for Obsidian. And so I'm just kind of trying to build those same sort of tools for Dendron, because it's already a lot of work to process these inputs, but I don't want to actually have to deal with all the manual input of building all of these just like empty notes just for the sake of having empty notes. I want to automate that boring thing. But in general, my approach to everything is automate freaking everything if I can. So because of segue to ADHD, executive dysfunction is really horrible. So like I can barely manage anything. So I basically outsource most of my life to software. So like I don't try to remember anything. I don't keep anything in my head. The minute I need to remember something, I put it either on my calendar or in my task manager, which is primarily right now I use, the calendar is not so important, but I use Morgan for the calendar and Todoist for my to-do, my task management software of choice. And Todoist is pretty nice because they have a lot of little shorthand things. Like I could type P1 and it makes it a priority 1 task, but they also do NLP or natural language processing for dates. So I could just say like today, and it captures that I'm talking about today, and it makes it due today, in a week, in 3 days, in 4 hours. Like all those different things work. So it's fast for getting input out of my head. So yeah, my working memory is not great. My executive function is not great. I can barely manage to do anything, let alone cook or care for myself. So anything to free up mental RAM to give me more willpower to do those things, the better. So I made my house a smart house. So I have like the voice assistant, this name starts with an A, who I can't say, or otherwise she listens to me. I have Echo Dots throughout the entire house. I have my Todoist I actually have on my computer. I have on my phone. I have shortcuts on my iPhone that I can just tap something and it will open up a shortcut that will let me just speak. And then it puts that into a Todoist task, and then Todoist does its work, recognizes the NLP stuff. I just click yes and submit, and then I forget about it, because the whole point is that I need to forget about it, not hold it in mental RAM, and just put it in a centralized place that I know that if it was important, I would have put it there. If I didn't put it there, it wasn't important, and I don't need to stress or worry about it or waste mental space. Just like I live off my calendar. So even my family, like I put birthdays on my calendar. I put my anniversary on my calendar. I put literally any event, anything on the calendar, and I never hold that stuff in memory. Sometimes I remember things, like obviously I remember my anniversary, but just in case, a week in advance, I got to get a gift, I have it on the calendar. So I even have my family like, oh, you need me to come help you with something? Let me check the calendar. I'll put you on the calendar. And it's just a way of, it's a coping mechanism. It helps me live a more fulfilling life, because otherwise, stress.
Hey, fair enough. Do you subscribe to the getting things done methodology?
I looked at it. I listened to some of, I think it's David Allen. I've listened to a podcast with him on it. I've taken notes on it. I think a lot of the elements I did take and I do use, but for like because I actually make videos on ADHD as well, and it seems like a lot of the stuff I talk about in that little niche area kind of really resonate with a lot of people who also have it. And I kind of talk about my approach to task management, which is, which, thank you, working memory, I've already forgotten, but I know somebody just put it down in my Discord, so I'm going to check that really quick. But it was a strategy of, I believe, there it is, sift, chunk, lineup, and conveyor belt. So like I'll take, if I have a large amount of tasks, which every day I do, it's like at least 30 or 50, because I put things like brush your teeth, take your vitamins, because if I don't have those things on there, I literally don't remember, or I just, whatever. But the satisfaction of clicking a bubble, hearing a sound, and seeing a task go away is enough to get me to actually do the things to take care of my basic needs, which I do struggle with. So sifting would just be like, I have a large amount of tasks to do on this particular project. I'll sift them out and pick out, like, these are the highest priority, these are the easiest to do. So either I'm going to like pick a high priority thing that I need to just put a lot of willpower towards and tackle a big thing, and then, okay, some momentum, continue on with that, or pick a lot of the small things, execute, and now I've got momentum just by volume of just like, okay, I'm checking things off, let's keep pushing on. Depends on how I feel in the day and how much motivation I have. And then chunk, which is when, if I just take a broad approach where I'll sift everything into groups of like, these are the high priority, low priority, then I'll chunk them and say like, this is all the low priority stuff. These are the things I can do in like a minute, which is like, I have a bunch of habits, like check my Readwise things for the day, or do my Anki flashcards. Okay, that's really quick. I'll just do that. And that's, sift it, chunk it into really easy stuff, do the easy things. And line up, which is when I'll say like, these are the easiest things and I want to snowball today. So I'll do the easiest possible thing and then get progressively harder. But because I got that momentum and I see things going away, it's, good momentum to keep going. And after I line all those things up, I can see that this path is okay, just continues forward. I'll conveyor belt, just easiest thing, keep them coming. And that's how I basically manage tasks on a day-to-day basis. So every day I wake up to like 30 different things, as basic as feed your cats, eat your breakfast, brush your teeth, take your vitamins.
That's pretty cool. Any plans to integrate with like AR type systems? Start doing like waypoints, like, hey, here's some tasks over here that you need to do. Go to the bathroom, you need to brush your teeth.
But Todoist does have a really awesome API, and there actually is an integration with Obsidian in Todoist that I don't use, but they have a great API. So there definitely is some stuff with automating Python and Todoist that I will be doing in the future, because I do rely on that application so much and I like it a lot that why not?
Nice. All right. Let's see what else we got on the list here. Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification. Is that something you did, or that's something you're working on?
I did that when I was in corrections, probably 3 or so years ago. I actually just got a frame for it today. Yay, green belt.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's to keep it short, they hype it up a lot. It's basically just, you learn a lot of basic statistics and you just follow a very rigid project management approach to looking at a process, picking it apart, applying actual statistical testing, and then refactoring the process to improve efficiency or reduce waste, or any of the 6 forms of waste that they talk about. And I did a project where I dealt with the reception centers of basically all of the intake centers for all state prisons in the state. I worked on a project that there was basically all but one state prison was massively out of compliance by the processing times they had to do for the initial history and physicals for any inmate entering state custody. And I ran through my Greenbelt project, did all 6 months of work and testing and project management and on-site meetings at San Quentin. So I had to drive to San Quentin for weeks at a time. And eventually just came up to a conclusion, put in an RFC with I forgot what the acronym means, but CAB for our IT system, and made a change to our electronic medical record software that ended up changing some different prisons to from like 10% compliance to like 90% compliance on a volume of like 400 different records per month of history and physicals being done for inmates timely. So it was a successful project. There wasn't like a lot of monetary savings, maybe like $16,000 of staff time, like wage hours, but yeah, it was a good learning experience.
Cool. Well, dang, it sounds like a bunch of interesting projects. Hopefully we can get you back at some point in the future once some of those things are sanitized and ready for presentation. You sound like
I want to refactor them too because they are butt ugly right now.
you know. All right. Well, I'm kind of to the end of my questions here. I'd like to open up the floor. Not that it hasn't been open, but if anyone's got any questions for Bryan, we'll start wrapping up after we're done. So if you got anything, unmute and jump in. I see Robert's unmuted. Maybe he's just always been unmuted. Who knows?
Dangerously.
Yeah, right. Well, okay. It seems like we've pretty much covered it. You definitely gave us a lot to think about. But thanks for your time tonight. It's always good to see you here. It's good to have you in the hot seat though, too. Next time around, I want to see some stuff in Arch too. Oh yeah, look at the server rack there.
That's the latest passion project.
Does it have a name?
The rack, no, but my servers do. I forget that actually. I ordered a new one that should actually be here in a couple of days, which is my dedicated NAS. The one I have in there is going to be running all my services. But let me check here. I actually have the names written down. The one running services is out of the Norse mythology. It's just named Ymir, which is like the large ass giant that gave birth to all the other gods and giants, because he's going to run all the services. And then the other one is, I can't find my servers names in here.
Wait, Mirror, like the one they named that space station after?
YMIR. Okay, and the other one is Fafnir, after the dragon from the Ring of the Nibelung story, because dragons hoard gold. So I'm hoarding my data in a NAS. So yeah, Ymir and Fafnir are the names of my servers.
I like it. Cool. Well, all right. I think we can probably call it there. It seems like we've satiated everyone's questions for the evening. But
have I talked your ears off enough?
I'm sure I could go all night, but I don't want to bother anyone. Well, thanks again, man. Hopefully we'll see everyone on Discord or Slack. I've posted some links to Bryan's socials and whatnot. He's got a Discord too, quite a bit more popular than my own. It's pretty cool. He's very active on there. But yeah, jump on. We'll see you guys otherwise in a month.
Thanks.
First Thursday. Oh, John's on. Hey, what's up, John?
Hey, how's it going, Woody? Good. It's going good. But yeah, this is cool. Jumped on a little late, but good to learn about you, Bryan.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap up the recording here and see you guys in a month.
Walter is actually the one I was talking about who taught me Git.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Years ago.
That's awesome. We need to do, if someone wants to do a thing on Git, that'd be very much appreciated. Everyone who's looking to learn something about Python should definitely learn something about Git.
Gave an hour-long free code camp talk about it. It's actually on my YouTube channel too, about the Git branching strategy and how we actually use it in our office too.
Oh, very cool.
Begin Git what strategy?
The typical Git branch strategy where you have
branching.
Like your.
I heard wrenching. I was like, what?
Well, I mean, at half the time you are wrenching commits around, so I'm still accurate.
All right.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Everyone have a good rest of your night.